Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you to our third webinar of the Singapore's Return to Normal series offered by Nuffield Academy. Tonight, we have the privilege of having our esteemed guest speaker, Ms. Zahira Masoud, to share her wisdom and insights on the topic. Ms. Zahira is the Principal Counselor at Nuffield Counseling. She has a master's degree in professional counseling and works with adults, adolescents, couples and families on a broad range of mental health conditions such as stress, anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. Without further ado, Ms. Zahira, please.
Thank you, Ken, for the introduction. A very good evening to those who have joined us here today. I'm Zahira, Principal Counselor and Psychotherapist with Nuffield Counseling. A few notes before we start. This webinar will be recorded, and by request, you can also email to us if you would like to have a copy of it. We have also built in some time for Q&A, so please post your questions in the chat box throughout the presentation and we will go through it at the end. And you can also share some of your knowledge and experiences in there as well. Okay, so let's begin. Today's topic can be quite selective for some of us. We have all shared one profound experience that we can all relate to. So, although our individual experience can be different from each other, we share a powerful commonality centered around the pandemic as it grows to change around the world. Well, for me, I certainly did not expect it to last all the way till April 2002. But who knows how much further, right? But let's acknowledge things are changing, okay? Given that 75% of the workforce can go back to work, to the office, the wearing of masks is not required outdoors, and you can gather in groups of 10. And I think last but not least, if the recent one would be Singapore nightlife is resuming on April 19 itself. But interestingly, these changes can still stir feelings of stress and anxiety around COVID-19 infections. As most of you may notice, people are still wearing masks outdoors despite the new regulations that is in place. Mask wearing is no longer mandatory outdoors because of the risk of outdoor transmission is significantly lower than anywhere else. Through this, we have discovered that many of us are still wary about the infection rate, and some of us are really anxious to resume life as we know it. At this point, what people really need is validation, that anxiety around COVID-19 is very much present in everything we do. So what we're going to do today is to explore some actual tangible ways to reduce some of these anxieties and taking care of your well-being, okay? So this is what I'm going to cover today. I really hope you can come out of these 30 minutes with some actual skills and ways to deal with our anxiety on going back to work. If you're able to manage your anxiety better, you're able to help others around you who are going through it, as well as whether it's your colleague or your friend or your neighbor or your family members. Okay, so let's move on to the contents of what we'll be covering today. Here's a quick overview. So the first one would be anxiety and COVID-19 while we're feeling the way we are feeling, okay? And we'll be covering some particular challenges we are facing at work, home, family life when we go back to work. I'll also certainly talk about tips to reduce anxiety and how we can build a care community within our workplace by having supportive conversations, such as being open and understanding that everyone has their own way of dealing with their stress and anxiety. All right, and I'll also be touching on how to connect with kindness and how it will be beneficial to coping with your own anxiety. And lastly, I'll discuss on 5 ways to well-being that helps mitigate any kind of anxiety in the long run. So throughout these, I will not be looking at the chat box while I'm talking, probably because I'll be really distracted. But Ken will be monitoring and will be flagging out some of the really important questions that we can address during our 15 minutes Q&A at the end. All right, so without further ado, let's begin. The first one is anxiety and COVID-19. As we all have collectively adapted to these disruptive effects of the pandemic, we certainly have evolved our behaviors in life and at work to adapt and thrive. For those who are fortunate enough to not lose their jobs, or worse, they undoubtedly have to make significant changes on how they can accomplish their work in order to stay productive and competitive in this new operating environment, right? So I can imagine how tough these can be in order to like flex new muscles and be comfortable in it. And this can be increasingly stressful for most of us. The difficulty with COVID-19 is still the threat, and it's still very much present. So the concern of managing and maintaining good mental health and physical health overall is crucial, okay? So although Singapore has the highest vaccination rate in the world, the work world is beginning to think about other possibilities to expand and utilize at the maximum possible. So at this point, there are many questions rather than definitive answers. Some of the questions we might have is that what kind of expectations will my employer have of me? Is there any kind of flexibility around it? What will work look like in the next coming months? What are the chances of me or my colleagues getting infected at work? What are the types of measures in place that we can all stay safe? I think this is really fair questions to be asking. Employers and employees alike are all grappling with the expectations, what work will look like moving forward as we begin to put the pandemic behind us. I think one of the key obstacles is that the fact that no one really have an answer for all of us at this point, and these can create a lot of uncertainties. The lack of clear answer weighs on people, some more than others, right? So, okay, so a little bit about the understanding of anxiety. Unlike fear, which is one of the stress responses to an immediate danger, anxiety is an ongoing sense of worry. Anxiety happens when we become overwhelmed with our emotions, especially fear, and want to avoid situations that make us more anxious in that environment. So we may be feeling a lot during this current pandemic as we attempt to adapt to these new work expectations. Having said that, we also need to acknowledge that our responses to this uncertain situation is just natural, okay? We may experience different things such as social anxiety as we find ourselves mixing with others again. We might feel worried for ourselves and our families because of the changes in routine, additional stresses, and the potential of risk of coming into contact with COVID-19 at work and public spaces. So in the next following slides, I'll be sharing tips on how to navigate through some of these challenges at workplace, home, and family. Okay, so some of the challenges at workplace would be getting back to face-to-face meetings, okay? Getting used to new social standards and changes in policies and procedures, feeling unsure of your role at work, the performance level, and the ability to express your concerns with your supervisors without the fear of backlash or ridicule. The other one I would think is that worrying about physical distance and what to do if others are not keeping that distance. I know like all of us are like getting really excited about intermingling, but these are really common fears that, most of the employees are facing. And I think the last one would be being back to work. We are more tired than usual due to traveling for work again, socializing and so on. So these are some of the challenges. And there are so many other challenges which I won't be touching upon here because I felt that these are the most commonly things that is addressed with anxiety at workplace. Okay, so some of the tips for the first one would be for face-to-face meetings. Tips that can reduce the anxiety for face-to-face meeting is take some time to get familiar with the changes, right? Discuss and agree with colleagues on how to conduct meetings. Take some time before and after meeting to ground and center yourself by doing some breathing exercises or just grounding yourself and being in a safe space. Okay, this will help reduce stress and anxiety. Discuss the impact of changes with your management and colleagues to help you come into terms with the new situation. All right, so the next one would be feeling unsure of your role. I think one more, what's really important here is to ask for a meeting with your direct manager or your supervisor to talk about your role so that you can set realistic and achievable goals for yourself without having the brunt of that stress, okay? And for physical distancing, discuss physical distancing arrangement with your colleagues and some of the agreed protocols at work. Review how well this is working for the team or even at team meetings. It's okay to take breaks if you feel overwhelmed and step away from situations that is uncomfortable or put you at risk. Okay, so it is okay to be doing that. And lastly, I would say that for that part where you will be feeling more tired than usual, I know working from home is just as tired as well. But going back to work and getting used to it again is definitely going to take a toll on you. So give yourself extra time for tasks or activities. Remember that being extra tired is a normal response to a stressful situation like this. So what's good is that you can practice mindfulness and have a set of new routines that would help you, get back to the work environment. Okay, so the next slides we will discuss challenges at home and with family. So the first one would be coping with the impact of changes on my family. Would be less time together, feeling more tired and stressed when at home because you need to balance, your family members and you need to balance work and stuff like that. So it is going to take a toll on you. And the next one would be bringing the germs home and making family members ill. I think a lot of people are concerned about this, and this can be really stressful for a lot of us. And I think one of the most important things when we are off to work is that our children will get anxious without us being around too. So speaking with children about anxiety and what they are feeling is definitely important and one of the challenges that a lot of people are facing right now. And lastly, how family members are coping with these changes, the way they are responding or reacting towards the changes. So for the first one, tips to reduce anxiety at home would be for family time. You can discuss concerns with family and agree on practical steps to take, such as safety measures or whether your work environment is safe for you, what are the things that is in place, the safety measures at work. You can also discuss your working hours and plan time off. I think what is good is that plan some fun activities together. So you can set aside, say, evening time where you are winding down with the family, read a book to your children, or, spending some quality time over dinner, to talk about, to talk about your day, or to talk about important events of the day. Okay. Talk to your family, adults and kids alike. Listen to their concerns, and answer questions and share facts that is available out there. Let them know that it is okay to feel fearful, upset, or concerned. All right. So the next one would be spreading germs at home. Okay, I think by now all of us know how to take care of our hygiene, and we need to learn how to protect yourself and your family. Be prepared of having a supply of whether it's hand sanitizer or face coverings, or anything that will make them feel safe and comfortable at home, or just taking a shower when you reach home as the first step of trying to prevent germs from spreading. So follow hygiene measures such as washing hands even regularly upon returning home, and share your concerns with your family so that they can support to reduce the risk too for those who are going out to work and going to school. Okay. And anxiety in children would be ask children what they are worried about, identifying with their feelings and what is their world like from their view. Invite them to come up with solutions while guiding them in line with public health guidelines. And I think there are a lot of resources out there these days. I feel one of the most impactful one would be teaching kids about mindfulness. Okay, I think that's really helpful for them to ground themselves in situation like this. Okay, so moving on, how do I overcome anxiety? I think mostly remember that, what you can share with your colleagues even at work is that remember that you can't pour for an empty cup. Okay, it is important to take care of yourself first. As we move through this, it is important to be aware that everyone is impacted by the pandemic in different ways. Now more than ever, it is important to show compassion, as we don't know what others are going through over the last year or so. Leading by example is a great way to encourage other people. So focus on what is inside our control, not on the things that we can't control. Example, maintaining good hygiene and being mindful on doing our part to minimize physical contact with others by following the regulations at work. Prioritize on well-being, take daily walks or other exercises, eat well, have a good sleep routine. These would be helpful, right? Look for ways to stay connected with your colleagues who might not be in the office at this point of time, or who don't share the same shifts or locations as you. It's good to just stay connected with people that means a lot to you, okay? The other thing is that I think it would be also important if you do have an access to an employee assistance program, in short, we call it EAP program, or similar support. If they are available at your workplace, please make use of it. Know when and where to get support at work or in the community. Also, I feel like ask for help if you're not coping well and struggling with how you're feeling. If you feel professional support would be helpful, talk to your doctor or a mental health professional about the options available for you. Okay, so what I find that is really important in the work environment is the importance of having open and supportive conversations, okay? Mental health stigma has been described as a sign of disgrace and negatively distinguishes one person from another. And it is rooted in our everyday language, believe it or not. The language that is commonly used about mental health can create a barrier that prevents people from truly understanding and helping others. Although the huge I mean, although the use of such words such as crazy, nuts, psycho may seem very trivial and innocent, these words are the building blocks of stigma, okay, and can lead someone to conceal their difficulty or their need for support. Using words like these are often associated with mental illness and potentially increases stigma. Okay, so the language we use can have a big impact when people are anxious, and language becomes more important than ever in such situation. However, it is possible to have conversations that can have the same meaning and tone without stigmatizing language. So there are such things such as some people around you may be struggling, some may be struggling with mental health difficulty, and some may be experiencing a mental health challenge for the first time in their life. So it's really good to be mindful, okay? While it may feel okay to have conversations like, example, isn't this whole COVID thing just so crazy? It's mad how the office has changed so much. Or maybe you'll be saying stuff like, I don't want to go to the canteen with everyone touching everything. This place is just crawling with germs. Sometimes when we say things like this, we don't realize how negatively it may impact someone who's dealing with a mental health condition. So these types of conversations are definitely leaning towards the negative and could use some, we could use some other types of languages without making our colleagues feel anxious. So instead, we could try things like, hey, isn't this whole COVID thing just bizarre? Do you see a difference here? Is it strange how much the office has changed? Or maybe the last part would be, I like to use the canteen, but I'm concerned about the hygiene and cleanliness. Do you see the difference in how, how using language in a more positive way can impact someone? So these supportive conversations are really, really important. So our conversations may be geared a little different than how we are used to with measures at work. In the context of the pandemic, it is important to understand the power of stigma. Okay, so two people can have very different experiences on the same situation. The thing is that is missing in a conversation so that they can both understand the other points of view. For example, colleague A who says to herself, she didn't come over to me to say hi to me. She must know that I've been having a rough time or having a tough time and do not want to talk to me because of it. This is the impression that colleague A might have. But instead, colleague B will be having an impression on the side and saying that it's so good to see her again. It's a shame I can't go over and hug her to say hello because of the distancing measures. What I like to see here is that, remember, physical distance does not mean socially distancing from others. You can always go up to your colleague and check in with them just to ask them how they are doing or how have they been coping so far. So I understand that, some of us may feel socially out of practice because of being so disconnected for quite some time. So it might be useful to consider conversation starters to help us get used to being around more people. So the tips on how to have open conversations, such as to understand each other's better, is ask general open-ended questions such as, how are you finding being back in work? Say that it is great to see you again rather than just thinking about it, okay? So be understanding if a person do not want to eat in the canteen and having fears of hygiene or just being in large groups. And it is also important that to know that this is a good time to encourage setting boundaries. Like if you need some space for yourself, you could politely decline an invitation for say for a lunchtime walk. Okay, so these are just some of the tips on how to have open and supportive conversation. So the next one, what I feel that is really important and impactful is when it comes to addressing our worries as we return to the workplace, is that we may carry so much mixed emotions towards the pandemic, and this can bring about a lot of feelings of negativity, which is really unhealthy, such as anger, confusion, and even disconnection towards others for a variety of reasons. Feeling an emotion and acting on it is two separate things, okay? So what we can acknowledge the feelings is that without behaving in a negative way. Instead, we can look at ways to express ourselves clearly and kindly. We can also connect through with others through kindness. By empathizing with them, we can all play a part in reducing the stress we feel by connecting with kindness with ourselves and with others. So making efforts to be proactive and help minimize some of the negative effects when in contact with others are, smile with your eyes behind our face coverings and connect with others, use friendly body language and gestures, so that we can just demonstrate patience, show more compassion and tolerance and kindness, open and thoughtful language as what was discussed earlier on. Okay, so lastly, I feel in order for us to all stay mentally fit and to help others around you, firstly, you really need to take care of yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup, okay? So 5 ways of well-being explains the 5 types of behaviors or everyday things people can do, or ideally we should all do, to help ourselves to stay emotionally, socially, spiritually, and psychologically healthy. So the 5 ways of well-being are simple, evidence-based actions you can do every day just to feel good and function well. You can Google for these resources online on 5 ways of well-being. Okay, the first one is that the evidence really shows that happier people can add 7 to 5 years. I'm sorry, 7.5 years to their life. Okay, it can extend the longevity of your life. That each of these 5 ways has been shown to improve personal sense of well-being across the lifespan and regardless of any starting point of mental health. The higher the level of well-being, the more likely it is for a person to stay in their jobs or have a full-time education. So the first one would be to connect with people around you. Whether it's friends, relatives, co-workers, neighbors you haven't spoken to in a while, or try to make new connections where possible. Friendship is one of the highest positive correlations with self-rated happiness. People who are in stronger social relationship have 50% increased likelihood of survival from conditions such as coronary vascular diseases and cancers. Okay, so the magnitude of having good social relationship is comparable with quitting smoking, and it exceeds many well-known risk factors of mortality, for example, obesity or physical inactivity. The most significant difference between those with mental ill health and those without is social participation, okay? So it's good to be connected. The next one would be active. Do anything you can to just stay active. Try a new class in the gym, go for walks, instead of taking the bus, try gardening, dancing, cycling, painting, anything that brings you joy, that you can choose and that depends on your, of course, it depends on your mobility and fitness levels as well, you know, in terms of like joining a you know, class to stay fit. Okay, so regular physical activities result in greater sense of well-being, stress reduction, lower rates of anxiety, and also protects against depression. All right. So, and the next one would be aware. Take some time to look around you, notice changes in the world around you, the passing of the seasons. Be aware of your feelings and reflect on your experiences. Be present in the here and now. So, being in a state of mindfulness predicts positive mental well-being. So it's good to look up into things like how to work on mindfulness, because mindfulness definitely grounds you to and helps you calm your nerves as well at the same time. The next one would be keep learning. Always try something new, a new hobby, a new language course. Take on a different responsibility at work, or set yourself a challenge each day that you enjoy achieving. Adult learning has been correlated with positive effects on well-being, reports of life satisfaction, optimism, and efficacy. Okay, so the synergy between well-being and keeping an active brain is that, especially for older people who report higher levels of well-being when they start doing things like, you know, even trying to even do stuff like Sudoku, and you know, and just challenging their minds every day. Okay, so give the last one would be give or help others. Do one good deed every day. Smile at passerby, saying hello to, you know, your bus uncle or your cab uncle, or just, you know, saying hello to your neighbors. You know, make someone a cup of tea, join a community a group or volunteer group. Just doing something good for someone can be beneficial to your mental health. We can all do our best to develop helpful ways to deal with our stresses and anxiety, so that we can bring the best of ourselves to our relationship with others. Okay, so thoughtful gestures and random acts of kindness are relevant more now than ever. Okay, so I guess everyone has, you know, everyone has a way of dealing with their stress and anxiety. The courage to change things you can by using this active conscious process will help you better deal with these feelings. I really hope this webinar has shared some insights to these challenges and potentially help you overcome some of the anxieties on going back to work. With that, here is my contact. You can email me or reach out to us at our website, or email to me directly, or even drop us a line if you have any questions. Okay, so let's get on to our Q&A. So let's see here. So I think most of the most commonly questions that people do ask about going back to work is that, you know, what do they do when, you know, their colleagues are not following the protocols of whether wearing a mask at work, or whether, you know, to even socially distance themselves and just forgetting the measures that is in place. Is that it's good to just politely, you know, speak to them about it, and being mindful that by what we have discussed earlier on, using the kind of languages that mindful positive language that we can you know, share some of our concerns with. So it's great to always apply that at work, okay? Because these can create a lot of, feelings of uncomfortable among colleagues, and, colleagues can get, there are some colleagues who are not equipped with to handle this kind of emotions better. So it's good to be very mindful when you talk to your colleagues. The other one that I feel that has a huge concern is that, for people who, it even appeared on Straits Times past few days ago, people are not so keen taking the public transport, given that it's so packed right now. And they would rather just work from home because, definitely that raised a lot of anxiety about spreading germs and bringing it back to work or at home. So there's a lot of talk around this, and I feel that I think as long as we are, we stay vigilant, because everyone has their part in this, right? It's a collective thing. As long as we stay vigilant and follow the protocols and the safety measures in place, I think that should still be okay. If you're still uncomfortable about, being in a full pack train, maybe discuss with some colleagues on how to, how to carpool together to work and things like that. I think this would help, help address some of those concerns. Okay, so is there any other questions that that anyone has for me that we can address in the sessions? You can leave your questions in the chat box if you don't feel comfortable, talking on the mic. Okay, I think there's one last thing that I would, as before we part in this webinar, I would like to encourage everyone who is definitely battling with any kind of mental health challenges, whether at work, at home, or their own personal struggles, is that if you feel like you're not coping well, it's always good to reach out to a mental health professional, whether it's your doctor, speak to your doctor, or speak to your supervisor or your managers on how to reach out and get help. It's really important. We do offer EAP services in our field as well, and these EAP services is something that you can discuss to have in place at work, because most workplaces are encouraging EAP services for their employees. So do talk to your managers about this if you do need that help, okay? Because EAP services are centered especially to help employees who are struggling with any kind of issues. And the other thing what we do at Nafil here is that we do all sorts of counseling pertaining to mental health. We do work with couples who are struggling in their relationship as well, parental issues as well. So feel free to drop us any questions you have with regards to any kind of struggles that you're facing, and we will definitely get back to you on these issues that you might have. Okay, so I feel that we have now come to the end of our sessions. If there's any other questions that you would like to ask me at this point, please feel free before we end. Okay, so thank you for joining us here today. Well, I hope all of you have found something really helpful in this webinar today. So Have a great evening and hope to see you in our next one. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.